Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul. In this video, we're breaking down Mulholland Drive. Often regarded as one of the best movies of the 21st century, it's a film that's a mystery wrapped in an enigma.
Yeah, he's a mystery wrapped in a Twinkie.
Inside of a blue box. Throughout this video, I want to go through the movie and talk about all the hidden things within it. I also want to go over the ending and discuss some of the deeper things going on. Now, normally in a video like this, we tend to go through the film scene by scene and discuss it moment by moment. However, for this, I think we need to recap the plot very quickly and then talk about what's going on as we work back through it. The movie's something that only makes sense in the end, but in order to get there, we have to start at the beginning. Kicking off with a character I'm gonna call Rita, we see she's saved by a chance collision. Taken out to a dark lane to be taken out, a car crashes into her limo and saves her life. However, she wakes up with amnesia and makes her way to an apartment to hide out. On the flip side of this, Betty Elms arrives in LA, hoping she can make it as an actress. We discover the apartment belongs to her auntie and find Rita hiding in it. Attempting to track down who she really is, this leads them across LA. On the flip side of this, we see director Adam Kesher. Strong-armed by the mob and studio system, he's forced to cast a woman in his picture. He also catches his wife cheating on him, and it almost destroys his achy breaky heart. Alongside this, we have contract killer Joe, who messes up a hit. He ends up killing bystanders and witnesses and couldn't hit the thumbs up if he tried. All these plots seem disconnected at first, but slowly they come together. Betty almost gets picked and put into Adam's film, but in the end he casts the mob's hire Camilla.
Who?
Camilla. They call her Camellia throughout, but I'll just stick to Camilla. Rita also remembers the name Diane after spotting it on a waitress's name badge.
Diane Selwyn. Maybe that's my name.
Going to an apartment that she thinks is owned by her friend Diane, they discover a woman's body rotting in a bed. Rita then wears a wig similar to Betty's bob, and the pair end up sleeping with each other. During the night she says,
Silencio. No hay banda.
which leads the pair to visit Club Silencio. It speaks to how dreams can often reveal the truth, even if they're slightly enigmatic. Watching a stage show, the performer collapses and it's revealed she was miming. Betty then finds a blue box, which just so happens to match the blue key Rita had on her. The pair open it separately, which then leads to them vanishing, and as an audience we fly into the box. After this, we catch Betty, who is actually Diane, waking up in her apartment. Turns out she's a struggling actress who's constantly being pipped to the post by Camilla Rhodes, who was Rita in the first half. Turns out that Diane and Camilla were lovers and they met at an audition. They're now working on Adam's movie, and Camilla and Adam are dating, and they then announce their engagement. Camilla also cruelly kisses another woman in front of Diane, who looks exactly like Camilla from the dream.
What the hell's going on? I mean, what the hell is going on?
From what we can gather, Camilla helped Diane getting some roles, and thus this connection being severed could likely end her career too. Diane then hires hitman Joe to kill Camilla at the diner, where we see a waitress named Betty. He says he'll confirm the kill by leaving her a blue key, which Diane sees sitting on her table at home. This is the blue key that they found in Rita's purse, along with lots of money. Now we learn at this point that money in itself is what Diane paid Joe with. I do feel like the hooker scene was also added for a reason, and it might even be hinting how she came by the cash. Diane also says,
This is the girl.
which is a phrase that's constantly uttered throughout the dream.
This is the girl. This is the girl. This is the girl.
This is the girl.
This is the girl.
This is Sparta!
So this moment clearly sticks with her as she's giving a death sentence to Camilla. It's the most damning thing in her life and the thing she regrets the most. So its constant repetition is hammering that home. Diane is then traumatized by hallucinations and she ends her own life, which then ends the film. So what's going on? Well, the standard interpretation is that the first half of the film is a dream.
And now I'm in this dream place.
Racked with guilt over killing her lover, she takes her own life, and it's thought that Diane dreams up an idyllic life. This is so she can cope with how her life turned out, as she's failed both personally and professionally. Things like stumbling across a woman with amnesia, who then falls in love with you. It's all things you'd expect to see in a Hollywood classic. We also have the mob conspiracy, which becomes the reason she lost the role. Rather than accepting she wasn't good enough, she instead dreamed up this situation where the mob forced a director to cast someone else. It's a complete coping mechanism because, of course, there'd be some machine working behind the scenes to explain why your life didn't work out the way you wanted. However, this all inevitably falls apart. Clues from real life start to seep in, and eventually the truth is revealed. Hollywood can be a nightmare to live in, and this reality reflects the idyllic dream perfectly. There's even a moment before they get in a cab where we can see on the lamppost is a sticker that says Hollywood is hell. So that's laced throughout, and in order to analyse the film properly, I think we have to look at Diane first. In my opinion, there's a key signifier in the first half that chronicles her life in LA. That is the blonde bob. Throughout the film, we see this on several characters. There's Diane herself, the waitress Diane at Winkies, the prostitute who gets into the van with Joe, and also Rita. She dons a blonde wig, and this was really signified to pay attention to the haircut. Personally, I believe the haircut signifies that these were all jobs that Diane had to work. We've all heard of the struggling actress or actor who had to work as a waiter, or hell, in extreme situations, they may have even had to become a prostitute. I've even seen theories that she might have been the bum, which is the darkest part of the dream. I want to discuss the diner scene in detail more later, but this could be a manifestation of her facing up to herself. The movie is clearly a comment on Hollywood and how LA can either make or break you.
Wow, you're smart.
What?
The film's scattered with things from across all the eras, with it being a collision of both the past and present. We have things like the swing dance at the start, and even the radio movie. These collisions, much like the car crash, are all impacting each other heavily. We have the old studio system mixed with the new, and Adam is, well, obviously, Lynch referencing himself. Beyond that though, I think Lynch is showing how the town can chew up and spit out girls like Diane. Even superstars like Marilyn Monroe, they end up dead in their bed just like her. Personally, I feel that's why the blonde bob was chosen, as it's clearly a nod to one of the town's biggest stars, and its most tragic cases. Either way, it's possible a hooker scene with Joe also hints to how Diane paid for the hit. We do know that she's broke and struggling, so I doubt she'd have the kind of money to pay for a contract killing. We also have her climbing inside the van, and from there we cut directly to Betty. So that makes sense to me. Naomi Watts, who plays Diane, has even said she saw a lot of similarities with her own experiences. She didn't go hooking or anything, but she said in terms of the building up and expectations and then disappointments, that's rampant throughout LA.
I expect nothing, and I'm still let down.
Watts said there were promises made, she'd ace auditions, but nothing really came from it. Watts even stated she ran out of money and in the end became very lonely. She said the dream turned to a nightmare that was filled with anger and jealousy, which is much like what Diane goes through. Watts actually lost her health insurance and was even due to be evicted. Nicole Kidman, however, convinced her to stay until the movie's release, which turned out to be very fruitful in the end. From what I can gather though, she had a really difficult career and was just exhausted by Hollywood. She apparently burst out crying in the audition because Lynch asked her how she was, which was something the other directors hadn't done before, and it just showed that they didn't really care about her. Lynch was really moved by this though, and in the end she took the part, which in itself is a tale about the pitfalls of Hollywood.
People have been getting off the bus for years and years. And I say it's like going to Las Vegas. Everybody goes there thinking they got a chance to win, and they all do have a chance to win, but 99% of them come back with less than they went in with.
Now, in getting into the movie itself, we open with a dance scene over a purple background, which is showing the jitterbug dance competition. This is badly superimposed though, and it's supposed to add that disjointed and almost cut out from reality journey that the movie takes us on. Anyway, as we later learn, Diane came from Deep River, Ontario. This is actually a nod to Lynch's Blue Velvet, as there's an apartment block called Deep River Apartments. Now, as I touched on before, she won this dance competition and it spurred her to go on to Hollywood. This is the jitterbug dance, which we'll talk more on later. Don't call me a moron.
What did you call me, Griff?
In this opening though, we'll likely see her as she's announced the winner, and this is superimposed over the background. We also have the elderly couple who appear here as well. Later, when she arrives in LA, we see this pair have been traveling with her. We get a strange scene in a limo, and the two are riding off while laughing. At the end, Diane's also tormented by them, and they're the spectres who chase her throughout the apartment. Now, it has been theorized that these represent a number of different things. The first is that it's either her parents or grandparents who spurred her on to go to LA.
Remember, I'll be watching for you on the big screen.
Okay, Irene.
Diane thought she was prepared after winning the competition in deep water, but yeah, that's a lot different to how competitive LA is. It's also been thought that they might have been the competition judges, but either way, they had a hand in her going there. If you're a fan of Lynch's work, then you might also notice that the old woman's played by Gian Beats. She features as Mrs. X in Eraserhead, and it's a nice callback to Lynch's earlier movie. Symbolically, they're thought to be embodiments of the Furies, who represent remorse and resentment. They also lived in the depths of Hades and dealt out punishment to the damned, which could be why they appear at the end. It's also stated in the myths that they'd sometimes appear on the surface and pursue wrongdoers until they were driven mad. This would sometimes be to the point of taking their own life, which is a path that Diane seemingly goes down. This is in her bed, which has a pink cover to it, which we later see as she wakes up in it. This is something we get a clue to in this opening, as after the dance we cut to the pink bed sheets. This then goes down into the pillow, which suggests we're entering a dream. The tagline for the film was even, "A love story in the city of dreams." LA is named the City of Angels, which Lynch would of course know. However, this change suggests the ideas behind the film. It's here that we cut to the thematic motifs of the movie, and these two scenes work together perfectly. In one, we have the fantasy dance scene, and then the harsh reality when we cut to the bed sheets. The film is filled with opposites, and even having a blonde and brunette protagonist works to emphasize this. So it's fantasy versus reality. We can also hear sniffing and breathing sounds accompanying this. This could either be through drug use or someone after crying, but let me know your thoughts below. Either way, we then cut to a beautiful woman in the back of a limousine. I believe this is the hit playing out, which was carried out by Joe. In the dream, he is a bit of a moron though, and we see him mess up and fumble a couple of kills. So personally, I believe that represents Diane's secret desires, that he messes up the job. To me, her way of coping is that he fumbled the hit and Camilla managed to escape. That opportunity comes like a deus ex machina, as we see cars race around the corner. This is like a 1950s drag race, which feels like it's pulled right out of Grease or something. James Dean.
Why did you say that?
So it's very much a representation of old Hollywood. According to IMDb trivia, the winding sections of the road also have an area known as the Snake. This is a place where lots of crashes have happened due to the blind curves. It's also thought that people who park their cars to take photos, they're the ones responsible for a lot of the crashes, as drivers pass around the corners without having time to brake. So that kind of lays the groundwork for this crash. Camilla also says,
"What are you doing? We don't stop here."
Which is a phrase that Diane says in the limo at the end.
What are you doing? We don't stop here.
In the car, you might also notice that Camilla doesn't have an engagement ring. So this could already be Diane coping that the character isn't engaged in the dream. We then see she leaves the wreckage and goes to Franklin Ave. You might also notice a cut on her head, which people have taken to be where Diane shot herself at in the real world. It's also possible this is how Camilla was killed, with Joe delivering a gunshot to it. We do later get something similar at the office, and the guy he kills has long dark hair. At this point, Rita then passes by Sunset Boulevard. Made famous by the movie of the same name, this Golden Age classic is said to have been a massive influence on Lynch, and it even featured in Twin Peaks. The Now Playing podcast pointed out that that movie begins with a dead screenwriter who then recounts the events leading to his death. So potentially, this movie could be about a dead actress who's doing the same thing. We also have the premise of the film, which is about a star who's fallen from grace. However, she still remains in this fantasy land and believes she's still a successful actress.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Diane's doing the same thing and has fully slipped into the fantasy. We then see the police investigation with Robert Forrester appearing as one of the cops. Lynch actually wanted him to play Sheriff Truman in Twin Peaks, and he was planning a similar thing here. Now, what I mean by that is that this project was originally supposed to be a show. Commissioned as a 90-minute pilot, this would air on ABC. Twin Peaks was obviously a massive success, and the studios wanted to recapture that. The series was going to begin with Rita emerging from the crash, and then the mystery of who she was would be discovered throughout the season. However, the pilot was hated by the exec that saw it, and thus the entire project was nixed. Lynch was apparently told this at a Q&A when he was about to go on stage and discuss it, and yeah, needless to say, he wasn't that happy, and you can kind of feel that dislike of how studios act in the movie. Eventually, Canal Plus came in and asked him to change it to a film, and they gave him the money to finish up the story. When the reels were sent out to the cinemas, they actually came with a note directly from Lynch. This stated that it had been shot for TV, and thus they had to correct things to allow for more headroom. This is because in the cinematic aspect ratio of the theatrical release, a lot of the top of the heads would have been cut off if they didn't pan the projectors up. or something. We fixed it now anyway with the home releases. Naomi Watts was apparently relieved by the change though, as she felt in the TV show her character was one-dimensional. Adding in the second half gave her much more to do, and thus she preferred acting in the film for where things go. However, because of this, we have some scenes and roles like Forrester's that seem pointless when we view the film as a whole. He'd obviously get more scenes in the show, and he was planned to appear in other entries. I think one of the issues that people have with the movie is that some of the scenes can seem a bit pointless. Lynch didn't really want to cut anything out though, and you can view the pilot as a whole somewhere on the internet. You know where to get it, me hearties. Yahar! Another scene that may seem pointless is where we go to next. This involves two characters discussing dreams. On the surface, this is a bit of a strange vignette, but it sort of explains the whole movie. Now in the scene before this, we watch as Rita goes down to bed. We see Diane's aunties getting stuff loaded into a cab, which sort of repeats when she's picked up at the airport. I was hoping this might be the same actor, but alas it's not. Either way, Rita sleeping perfectly transitions us to a scene about the discussion of dreams. That is, between Dan and Herb. Taking place at Winkies diner, this serves as a place of revelations. In the real world, this location was a Denny's, and the logo even resembles the chains. However, due to licensing issues, they weren't allowed to use it. Not only is it where Rita spots the name Diane though, but it's also where Diane orders the hit. In this first section, Dan tells Herb about a recurring dream that seems to then play out as we go through the scene. He talks about Herb going up to the counter, and then we see as that happens. The pair then go outside, and slowly his dream becomes a reality. In the lead up to it, Dan discusses how he witnessed a horrendous face, and it's something he wouldn't want to see in the real world. Upon making it to the alleyway, upon getting to the alley, the bum pops out and Dan falls back into Herb's arms. Now this apparently is something that Lynch actually pulled from real life. Getting scared by a homeless person, he ended up writing this moment into the project. However, I think on a narrative level, it highlights what the film's going for. We have the merging of dreams and reality, and this ends up with a horrifying realization. The conversation starts off at a Winkies and then leads Dan to seeing the truth of the dream. This is not too dissimilar to the quest that Betty and Rita go on. They sit in a diner, spot the name Diane, and then go on a journey that unearths the truth.
A journey that has taken us through the depths of our psyches. A journey that I don't have time.
Also, yeah, it's going to get confusing with the names. I know, I apologize. Not my fault, I didn't write the movie. In terms of metaphor, this diner was where Diane hired Joe, and then it led her on a path in which she went to her own demise. She then looked up and saw a man at a counter, and this is who Dan is in the dream. Dan said he looked up and saw Herb, and it was a very important moment. It is believed that those we see within dreams have the faces of those that we've seen in real life, even for a brief moment. So it makes sense that Diane would place him here as he comes from here in the real world. Similar to Dan, she's trying to smile her way through it and reassure herself that things will be different. However, they won't be. Unfortunately though, as Dan says, he has to go through it.
To get rid of this god-awful feeling.
Before dying at the end, she also spots the homeless person, and thus it's an omen of death that leads out from here. Also, though she's on screen for a split second, the person playing the homeless person is played by Bonnie Aarons, who would later go on to play the nun. Dan does refer to the bum as a man in his description though, which again highlights the fluidity. Anyway, from here we cut to a phone which is lit up by a strange light. This then transitions to another phone which appears next to a lamp. This has a red lampshade on it, which is important to pay attention to. When Diane later gets a call in her apartment from Camilla, we see this phone again along with the lampshade. This led to her going into the limo, which then led to the engagement announcement, which I'm still not over. So you can see how that limo thing was brought into the dream. During this, we also see studio head Mr. Oak. Played by Michael J. Anderson, he comes across from Twin Peaks. Though he's a little person in real life, they fitted him with oversized arms and legs. This was to make him look unnatural and like he was something slightly inhuman controlling the picture. It's very eerie and odd, and yeah, he's sort of like a god who runs everything in Hollywood, which again is a further invention by Diana to cope with her failing career. After this, we then get Betty arriving in LA alongside this older couple. You might notice she wears a pink cardigan throughout, which I believe plays into the bedsheet. Played like they're people she just met off the plane, there's a very strange undercurrent to it. However, everything is too perfect to try and find fault in it. Even the cab driver picks up her bags and loads them before even being asked to hit the thumbs up. Everything is just sort of falling into place perfectly, but watching it, something's off. The couple laugh strangely in the back of their ride, and at the apartment block there's dog poo in the foyer. It highlights that there's something not quite right, but we quickly brush it to the side. The couple are also riding in a black limo, which may play into the one in the crash. Now, speaking of the apartment block, this is where we meet the landlord Coco. Played by Ann Miller, she's another Hollywood Golden Age star that highlights Lynch's fascination with the past. Now, it turns out she's actually Adam's mother in the real world. Clearly aware Camilla slept with her son for the pod, she's a representation of control and a figure who governs how people should live, even if they don't pay attention to her and break the rules, by letting their dog poop in the courtyard or getting engaged to the woman they don't approve of. It's here that they then enter the apartment, which clearly feels like they're riffing off Melrose Place. There's a long tour through it, and it's almost like discovering a location in a dream. However, Betty finds a woman in the shower, and this is where she adopts the name Rita. In another throwback to an old Hollywood classic, this is because she spots the name Rita Hayworth on the poster for Gilda, which is another nod to one of Lynch's loves. Diane also pretty much says what her dreams are.
Well, of course, I'd rather be known as a great actress than a movie star. But, you know, sometimes people end up being both.
It also plays into how she views herself and how she wants fame and acclaim.
That is, I guess you'd say, sort of why I came here.
Rita then falls asleep, which you definitely shouldn't do when you've got a concussion, mate.
As you can see, I'm a doctor. Board certified.
Either way, this falling asleep brings with it another revelation. Diane later rings her auntie and she says she has no idea who the woman is, which is a characteristic shared within Rita.
I don't know who I am. What do you mean? You're Rita.
Now, most people at this point, you call the police, but Diane is clearly desperate to help her. It speaks to how Diane views herself as a good-natured person who'd go out the way to help anyone in need. On the flip side of this though, it also points to what she wishes for her love life. Diane would love for Camilla to forget everything and then fall back in love with her. The amnesia would act as a clean slate and allow for the pair to go back to how they were. Now from here we cut to the studio and see Adam Kesher's talk with the producers. It's very much a representation of Lynch, down to the hairstyle, blazer and the attitude. Told he has to cast a girl as a certain part, this is strung on by these strange studio figures. It's ridiculous, over the top, and like the guy being told it's the best espresso in town and then spitting it out. It's all a send up of how picky that they are. Like the server coming in as well and being nervous, just brilliant. It kind of represents the old style of Hollywood and how ridiculous some of those things were, which modern Hollywood might be doing as well. Just watch our June video to see how much they forced his hand there. Lynch compares the studio to gangsters who forcibly take control of your picture.
It's no longer your film.
However, Adam is rebellious and he initially lashes out by smashing up their car. Reminds me a lot of the story of Jack Nicholson, who apparently did something similar. Nicholson's nicknamed the Mulholland Man, which might be a further reference to him. Intercut with this are also scenes of the Hollywood head being told what's going on. He wants Adam to cast Camilla Rhodes, who in the end ends up taking the role away from Betty. As mentioned earlier, she also appears at the restaurant and the real Camilla ends up kissing her. So to me, in the dream, she represents the opportunities being stripped away from her in both her career and her love life. London City Girl actually came up with a brilliant theory about what Camilla represents. She stated that Diane was the one splitting Camilla into two parts mentally, with one being her career and the other being her lover. Camilla took both love and a job from her, and this is why she appears as two people. Camilla has a blonde bob as well, further tying back into that notion. In the eventual performance in the radio booth, it also appears like something from the 50s, further tying into that aesthetic. Anyway, across with Joe, we see him talking to someone who discusses a car crash. Yeah, you can really notice Joe's heterochromia, which means different colored eyes. It's a really groovy mutation. Lynch apparently put these in as a nod to his friend David Bowie, and this is also why he has a Union Jack shirt. I feel like the heterochromia might also be a nod to how there are two different ways to see the movie. Either way, the crash is obviously involving Rita, and he potentially kills his friend because he's asking questions. In doing this though, he messes up and accidentally hits someone next door, kills a janitor, and then sets off the fire alarm. So it's basically showing how incompetent that he is. He does end up taking a book from his desk though, which I'm guessing would have been explored in other episodes. However, with the new ending, we see this book with Joe at the diner in the real world. I take this as having notes on the hit, and Joe takes it to hide the truth of it being revealed. With Rita, she also says,
Mulholland Drive.
There it is! There it is!
which makes Betty get the idea to call the police.
We'll pretend to be someone else.
Which, yeah, you get the subtext with that one, mate. You get the subtext there. Either way, we then jump back to Adam. Not only has he had his picture taken away, but he finds out his wife sleeping with the pool guy. Played by Billy Ray Cyrus, this whole scene's ridiculous.
Just forget you ever saw it. It's better that way.
All of these figures are of course projections of Diane, so it's even possible she's reassuring herself there. However, it does come from Adam's real life. In the real world we discover,
I couldn't believe it. I wanted to buy that judge a Rolls Royce.
so he clearly sees himself as looking out, and I feel like Diane wants to add more misery to the character. We then cut back to Diane and Rita, with them hiding the money in a blue dress box. This is to bury the truth of the matter, and it builds off the symbolism of the blue box. Going to a phone booth, Betty rings the police and asks about the accident. This is an anonymous call in which she's trying to check where it happened. In hindsight though, this could have been her confirming the hit because the blue key may not have reassured her, or maybe a side of her just didn't want to believe it until she knew for certain. The pair then go to Winkies, which again is off Sunset Boulevard. Served by waitress Diane, this is the same one that serves her later when she asks for the hit. Again, there her name is Betty, and just like that influences her choice in the dream, Rita makes a choice from this moment. Attempting to call Diane, we then get this line.
It's strange to be calling yourself. Maybe it's not me.
Which obviously has a deeper meaning on a second viewing. Either way, back at Adams, we see a mobster come out of a limo. You might notice that the guy from the studio is in the back seat, and this shows it's one of his enforcers. I've seen a lot of confusion over the scene, and he ends up hitting Adam's wife and Jean. Like the like button. This was originally supposed to be something that would be followed up in episodes after this, but like I said, Lynch never got to make the show. Jumping across to Adam hiding out, we hear he's been cut off from the bank. Somehow the studio know where he is, and it paints him out like an all-seeing entity. Thus he calls his secretary and learns of the cowboy, a strange, mysterious figure. Those supernatural elements are shared in the next scene, and at Betty's we see a psychic knock on her door.
My name's Betty.
No, it's not.
This reveals a lot of the truth on a second watch. The psychic also warns that there's a woman in the apartment who's in trouble. As we know, it's possible that Diane's on drugs or dead, and that she could represent a neighbor being worried about her. That night, Adam eventually goes out to meet the cowboy, and he's the one who tells him straight, you have to hire Camilla. He's an ominous figure, and to me, he somewhat represents a gatekeeper. He's the one who makes the decisions and basically rounds up the talent. Like a cowboy, he ominously tells Adam if he does good, he'll see him once again, and twice if he does bad. The cowboy then appears twice again from this point of the film. The first of these is when he wakes up Diane from the dream. The second is as the woman goes to the bathroom after kissing Camilla, and we see him walking out the restaurant. This then leads Diane down the path where she potentially takes her own life. The cowboy also says,
man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be.
Applying this to Diane, it could show how it's her attitude that led her to where she is, rather than the others that she currently blames. Her attitude also has her goals leading to her own disappointment. She wants to be a star, but this is extremely superficial. It will likely just lead to a life of misery and disappointment, and eventually this drives her to murder. So it's all her fault. He then seemingly disappears, and we cut to Betty and Rita arguing. Turns out this is an audition scene, but I feel like it's an argument the pair would have had in real life. Line for line, it's also exactly the same as the audition scene that Betty later has. However, the tone and delivery, it's completely different. I think this speaks to the film's duality and how we're seeing the same thing playing out in totally different ways. The scene also ends with,
So get out of here before... Before what? Before I kill you.
before we then get,
I hate you! I hate us both!
Diane clearly hates herself for killing Camilla, and thus this leads to her knowing her fate can only go one of two ways. She can either end it, or, like Camilla says,
They'd put you in jail.
in what's a nice detail, the lines they're reading off the script are also from the actual script, so it's another fourth wall breaking moment. It's also likely that this audition's where Diane and Camilla met in the real world. Coco then knocks at the door and tells her about how Rita's trouble. She says the psychic warned her last night and leaves Betty with this stern instruction.
But if there is trouble, get rid of it.
Coco is of course a representation of control, and I feel like it's Diane, reassuring herself she was just in her actions. Camilla was destroying her career and emotions, and therefore something to dispose of. We also see a car passing by with shady figures looking in at the apartment. I take this as being the police, whose investigation in the real world slowly seeping in, which is a line we get a hint to later.
Oh, by the way, those two detectives came by again looking for you.
Either way, Betty then arrives at the Paramount lot, which apparently they couldn't use the name of because Paramount don't like it being on film. Don't like people talking about their films either if their copyright claims or anything to go by. Yeesh. Anyway, in the audition we meet director Bob Brooker, who out and out says that Betty's not right, which is something that sits with her.
The director.
Bob Brooker?
Yes. He didn't think so much of me.
However, if you look at the reactions from everyone else, you can tell they don't agree with him. Even when he's giving advice on how to play the scene, everyone just kind of looks about confused. Everyone else says she's fantastic, and again it's Diane coping that he doesn't know what he's doing. Amongst these is also James Caan, who actually played a character named Lynch in Wall Street. Upon leaving, those with Betty say the movie's a non-starter and isn't worth getting involved with, which is another form of coping. Taking her to meet Adam Kesher, he's then clearly besotted by Betty. He stares at her longingly, and in Betty's mind this is her telling herself she's wanted. However, to her, his hand is forced, and thus he has to cast the mob's choice. She also rushes off because she has to meet Rita, so she doesn't even audition. I kind of read this as being like, well, I didn't want the part anyway. In both cases though, her not landing the role isn't really down to her. With Betty and Rita, they then travel to Diane's. Noticing the strange figures along the way, the pair duck down, almost like they're hiding from police. They then reach the apartment list, which is where they spot Diane's name. Beside this is L.J. DeRosa, who was a member of the film's art department. Upon knocking on the neighbors, we then meet a woman. In the real world, she knocks on Diane's and collects some of her things. In the dream, she also says,
I switched apartments with her.
Due to this, people have drawn the conclusion that this neighbor and Diane were lovers at some point and may have even lived together. She and Rita look at each other strangely and both share similar characteristics, so she might have been the rebound and could fit into Diane's type. Breaking into the apartment, they find a dead woman in the bedroom. Rita then cuts her hair and Betty gives her a blonde wig. Looking in the mirror, we see further themes of reflection as the pair stand there. Not only are they standing in a mirror, but they both look like mirror versions of each other. Rita then gets in bed with Betty after she strips off. Can't show it, but chances are if you've watched it then you'll have seen either one of three versions. The first is Laura Harring completely nude, which was how it was in cinemas. The second is the early home media releases, which have her lower body blurred. Looks like a Barbie. Third is the 4K version, which has darkened the scene so you can't really see anything. Now why this was done on the home releases is because Lynch heard that naked pictures of her had been spread all over the internet.
Bullshit.
Not wanting to add to that, he ended up blurring the actress in subsequent releases, which is actually one of the nicest things I've heard a director do.
What a heavy load Einstein must have had. Fucking morons everywhere.
Heading to the show, we then hear,
"It is an illusion."
Betty then shakes dramatically during this. Her dream is falling apart. A man then steps on stage in a red suit. If he looks familiar, this is because he's also the landlord who told Adam that his funds had been cut off. Diane's imagination is running out of faces though, and thus she starts using the same ones. This then leads us to the performance. The singer belts out the Roy Orbison song Crying, which is the second time Lynch has had someone lip sync to his songs. Betty is captivated by this and the singer then collapses. However, the record still keeps playing. Putting on my film analysis hat, I did wonder if this was a metaphor for dreaming. The person is unconscious, but the things keep going. It's not too dissimilar to consciousness, which can continue in a dream. The fantasy then starts to fall apart as the blue box is pulled out of her handbag. Upon returning home, Betty then vanishes and Rita grabs the key. She pulls her handbag out the blue box and then puts the blue key into the blue box. It's blue boxception. Upon opening this, the dream ends and the truth is finally revealed. In reality, we then see as Diane's auntie checks the room. She was of course supposed to be away, but this shows that she never really left. I think it also highlights the difference between the dream world and reality. There are theories that the film even deals in parallel universes, which this moment could potentially signify. The realities may have bled into each other, and this is why her auntie goes to check the room. However, upon going there, she realizes there's nothing and thus ends up exiting. Diane does later say she's dead though, so maybe this is still part of the dream. Either way, I think it highlights there's nothing in the room and that the pair were never in the house while she was there. Across with Diane, we then catch her being awakened by the cowboy. The door gets a knock from her neighbors and we get a focus on the room. The paint on the wall here is blue, symbolizing the blue box that she lives in. Upon Rita opening the blue box, she was taken to this blue house, which is a great bit of symbolism. After seeing her neighbor, she then gets a vision of Camilla. This shows the breaks in her psyche, and upon crying we then see as Diane shows up standing in the same spot she was. This confirms the pair are the same and that there's cracks showing in her mind. She's over the moon she's back though, and starts to see her about the apartment, which sort of gives us visions of the past, which we can tell by the ashtray on the table, which was just taken by her neighbour. All the while though, Camilla is dead. We then get replays of their time together and how torturous it was for Diane. No one's the villain in their own story though, and to her she's getting revenge on the person who ruined her life. And some of the stuff Camilla did was really bad. Whether this is from Diane's perspective, you can argue, but from what we gather, she clearly toyed with her emotions. Inviting her to Mulholland Drive, this was actually just to announce their engagement. She also kisses Dream Camilla, and we see the cowboy for the third time. He's likely someone she didn't even really pay attention to when it was happening, but every aspect, every part of this night, it's embedded in her subconscious. Even the little things. Like the guy sat over on one of the tables, this is the mobster she saw in her dreams. It then leads to her calling in the hit.
You sure you want this?
More than anything in this world.
Deep down though, we know she doesn't, and it's something she'll wrestle with forever. Going round the corner, she then comes across the bum who's playing with the blue box. This is clearly in her mind though, and it represents the death she's now dished out. Focusing on the box in a bag, we see as the elderly couple come running out. They torment her and she sits and stares at the key. A blue looking box also returns in her drawer as she reaches for the gun, potentially symbolizing death and the truth. It's at this point that she then takes her own life, and we get another vision of the bum. This was the face that Dan, or rather Diane, never wanted to see, and it symbolizes the end. We then get the superimposition of Betty and Rita, akin to the way we open the movie. Finally cutting to the blue-haired woman from the show, we hear her say, Silencio. This is actually Corey Glazer, who was the film's script supervisor. Tops off this incredible movie though, and I hope you've enjoyed us going back through it. Please drop a like on the video if you have. I know there's lots of things to talk about. Lynch is famous for saying, look, I'm not going to explain anything in the movie. You make up your own mind, and that's whatever it is. And if you agree with me, if you don't, if there's things we missed, drop them below. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos? If you click the join button, you get at least one breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month, and we've tried to set it where hopefully it's not a lot to you, but if a lot of you do it, it will mean a lot to us. We've also got some heavy spoilers merch right below the video. You know, I've got some of it in the background if you like that. We've got double-sided t-shirts, ones for The Last of Us, Invincible, anything you want, Daredevil, it's all there. So yeah, go check them out, and huge thank you for all your support. Now if you want some else to watch, you've got a breakdown of Jaws on screen right now. I love going back to that classic, and I think you guys will have a lot of fun going back to the first horror film I ever saw that made me never want to go in the sea again. But out of the way though, huge thank you for sitting through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.